Well, we're joined now by Camilla Tominey, Ateh and Vanessa, who've all watched it in the past few hours. So good morning to all of you. Holly and I have watched the whole of episode 1. We've watched some of episode 3.
Yes.
Camilla, it was billed, it has been billed, and we don't know what the next 3 episodes will be when they drop, but we watched the first 3. No bombshells here. I mean, the first episode is essentially a love story.
Yeah. Beautiful.
It's got kind of like a kind of when Harry met Meghan feel, like it's slightly chick-litty in a way, combined with obviously these very strong statements about the press. So it's kind of part becoming Michelle, like the Obama documentary that was made, and then also trying to take a stab at how the narrative changed for Harry and Meghan during the course of their relationship. Now, obviously, because it's been made with them and with their cooperation and paying them, it does obviously put them in a very, very flattering light. You know, Meghan is the super intelligent A student that wanted to change the world. Harry talks movingly, obviously, about losing his mum. It's kind of like very compelling. There are a few subtle digs at the royals. You know, there's Meghan's suggestion that even behind closed doors, William and Kate are very formal. She talks about sort of curtsying in this kind of medieval way that the palace operates. There's another point where I think Harry talks about how royal men have traditionally sort of not necessarily followed their hearts, but their heads. Again, you look at it and you think, oh, God, you know, they express a lot of love towards each other, but there isn't very much love expressed by Harry to anyone in his family except his late mother.
All right, well, Vanessa, let's come to you and ask you that first question then, because I think that everybody sort of watched it and has gone, oh, well, there's nothing too bombshelly about this.
I've got to say, first of all, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I was very fascinated by it. And I really was very interested to know about how they met actually on social media. I mean, I hadn't known that. That was fascinating. And he saw her and he followed her, and then friends kind of actually introduced them. And then what about the fact that she left him after just an hour to go off to something else, and leaving him obviously wanting more? Hot tip for every woman out there, and every man too. That's the thing to do, just leave. And then she asked him out for dinner, and that was the dinner that really got the whole relationship rocking. And she said he must have thought that she was a really pushy American, and he laughed. I mean, these are all details we've don't know.
We've actually got a little bit of their first date chat here.
You were late. And I couldn't understand why he would be late. He kept texting when he was late. He's like, I'm in traffic, I'm so sorry, I'm in traffic, I'm so sorry.
I was panicking, I was freaking out. I started sweating.
Again, I didn't know him. So I was like, oh, is this what he does? Got it. Like, this I'm not doing. I'm not gonna sit.
What was that supposed to mean?
Like one of the guys who's so much of an ego that you're not gonna, that any girl would sit around and wait for a half hour for you. And I was just not interested in that.
And then when I walked in,
he was
hot,
just so
sweaty,
sweet.
red ball of mash. She's like, oh, that's not. No, that's not what you want.
That's not what you
I'm
are.
so
You genuinely
sorry.
were like so embarrassed. There was one photo. We just wanted to capture the feeling of just sitting in that little restaurant and going, oh my gosh, I think we're gonna give it a go.
There's quite the way through episode 1. There's a very busy piano player in the background. Those are pictures we haven't seen before. It is a lovely insight.
It is, and I also think, you know, in fairness, if anyone were to tell the story of how they fell in love with a partner that they're still in love with, any normal wedding video for absolutely anyone has that schmaltzy music in the background, has this magical meeting, you know, whether it was at Aldi, Lidl, whether it was at the bus stop, you know, whether it was a prince or whether it was a pauper. Everybody feels like that about their own relationship if they're still in love.
And they are very, very much in love. That comes across very clearly. Ateh, there's this feeling, isn't there, before this? It was like, well, Netflix are paying 88 million for something. We deserve to be floored, shocked, appalled, horror. This is going to be, you know, we
Still
need
got
these
3
bombshells.
episodes to come.
We have, and we don't know what's in that. However, if it's going in this thread that we're seeing here, we are getting a lot of access to them, but it's not what we're horribly hungry for.
The popcorn. Everyone's with popcorn waiting for the truth bombs to come. I thought it was so charming and very clever in that I've always been Team Harry and Meghan. I've been talking about them for years, supporting them. she's been painted as a scheming, predatory, prince-hunting woman. And I think the first episode shows that they have a deep love, a friendship and a connection. And I'm really happy that they get to tell that side of their story.
And it was a very natural meeting. It was it was over social media. They're both looking at each other's Instagram accounts.
She said that he had a list of what he wanted in a woman.
Which he wouldn't disclose.
He wouldn't disclose
But everyone has a list.
Yeah, but that was quite cool. And then he said, you're the list. Come on.
Charming
and that seemed off the cuff and really genuine. That
Camilla,
was nice.
it says at the start of the documentary, a slide appears saying that this is a first-hand account of Harry and Meghan's story told with never-before-seen archive. All interviews were completed by August 2022. Obviously, this is prior to Her Majesty's death, followed by a slide which says members of the royal family declined to comment on the content within this series. So those are the two things that they wanted to get out of the way, first of all. Looking at the coverage leading up to this, and of course, nobody knew what was going to be in these first 3 episodes, apart from the fact that the biggest attack appears to be on the media. And we were led to believe by the media that there were going to be enormous attacks on the family, a racist core, all of these things. But it looks like the media spun that to almost say, look over here, don't look over there, because what they're going to do is have a go at us.
No, I don't think so, because I think the media has said all along that they thought there would be a blame the media strategy for the whole documentary. In fact, I wrote that the other day. I mean, I don't think the media's misrepresented what was expected in this documentary, because what's come out of this documentary is exactly what is to be expected, right? It's the couple's own story. They're telling their own love story. They're totally entitled to do that. As Harry said at the beginning of the first episode, you know, this is the full truth and only we know the full truth. But obviously there's always 2 sides to the story. The royals haven't cooperated with this documentary. They wouldn't, because it's a commercial endeavour. And also that they feel that the couple are making negative comments about the institution, which they are by implication. I mean, it's dressed up very subtly and politely and nicely. And obviously it's a hugely favourable portrayal of them and their exit from the royal family. But as the late Queen famously said, recollections may vary. There'll be some looking at this thinking, well, hang on a minute, we worked for you and we tried our hardest to make life as good for you as we could. There are people in the palace who say, we bent over backwards, we tried to protect you, we tried to give you everything that you wanted, and then increasingly you just wanted to operate in a silo to the point where we couldn't really help you at all because no help was good enough. So I get what you're saying. I don't think anyone was expecting any more truth bombs than were dropped on Oprah, right? I mean, if this had come without Oprah having ever happened, then it probably would be more controversial. But no, I think the documentary is exactly as billed, right? It's the couple saying, it's a love story, that's why we did this. And by the way, it's not just the British media that are racist, but Britain itself. I mean, there's quite a few sort of suggestions that because of Brexit made Britain racist against Meghan. And that's the subject of open debate, right?
So the beginning of episode 3, there's a lot about the British Empire, and it's a history lesson, actually. Yeah. It's often a history lesson you don't hear that much about, an important history lesson.
Yes. Very important. I mean, I did my ancestry.com and my mum's from Trinidad, and so I told someone and I said, oh, you know, she's from Nigeria, and they're like, why is that from? And it was actually shocking that she didn't make the connection that Trinidad and Africa, because a lot of people don't make the connection that we live in an environment and a history of slavery, and that's a huge part of our culture because it was always over there. We know about America and the Deep South, which is the documentary, but we, you know, people were stirring sugar into their tea and benefiting from this horrible slave trade. And as a black British woman, I feel it every day. I was just having a coffee with a friend who's mixed in East London, and someone raced across the road and spat in her face.
No way.
Yes, and it's not my story to tell. I'm sure she'll talk about it, but unless you feel it, you don't know what happens on the daily basis. You know, Meghan was talking about always wearing muted colours. I've been in the beauty industry for 20 years. Only since COVID and the pandemic, have I worn colour? If you see pictures of me, I wore black, I wore a power handbag, and that was to blend in, to protect myself, because I never felt I had the agency to be my authentic self. But in the pandemic, all bets were off. I thought, you know, if I'm going to go down, let me put a crown on and wear pink. And I've been myself ever since. So there's so many things in the documentary, especially episode 3, that I relate to.
Yeah.
Like, what has she really done? I think people are very cross with her because she dares to want things. She dares to have a voice, and it's not her place.
And what's the subtext to that,
The subtext is, who do you think you are?
Right.
It's a bit windrushy. You know, you were invited here and off you go now. And in the same way, I think people are very cross with Meg. Who do you think you are?
Yeah.
And I think that is the tone that they're uncovering and unearthing.
Just one of the other aspects which is fascinating is you look at young Hollywood stars.
Yes.
Who are thrown into the limelight very early on, and their lives come apart and they fall off the rails and it all goes terribly wrong. Here are kids, essentially. There is point made. Obviously, we see him walking behind his mother's coffin, and so looking at that. Here is someone whose life is scrutinised in every aspect. And I know that Camilla said in the past that, you know, there is an agreement that you get this press shoot and then that's it. That's clearly not the case, because there are even a lot of the foreign press will overstep the mark.
One of the most moving bits was when Harry's at Eton, and you see he's 13.
I know.
Imagine we remember how we felt when we were 13. God, you don't know yourself, you don't know where you're going, where you're coming, and he's just at school, for God's sake.
Yeah.
And Prince Charles has asked, and it's been agreed that, you know, the press are going to leave them alone while they're at school, William and Harry, and they clearly don't at all. And you see just Harry coming out of a lesson, walking across the road with all his other schoolmates, and you see him, you know, flinch, shrink away, look absolutely mortified, and it goes on all the time.
There's a moment on the ski slopes where Diana's sitting with the boys, they're having lunch, and they've done their morning press shoot, but obviously the paps are there, and we don't know, you know, who the press were, because the foreign press run under different regs, of course. But she then gets up from the table and walks over, and Harry says, you know, he loved the fact that his mother was so strong with this, walks across and confronts the guy with the camera. Puts her hand over the camera. Yeah. But the point is, my point is, what does that do to your head? No matter if you're royal and you're in a palace, if you are a child or a teenager and you're under that kind of scrutiny, what does that do to your head?
And I have to say, I don't think I've ever seen it evoked so forcefully as in this documentary. I think it's worth watching it just to see that. If you're wondering what it was like to be Prince Harry when he was growing up, you really see it in this very, very vivid way, don't you?
And I'm sure
never seen
Camilla
that
would say that
before. Amazing.
Leveson, those things have changed. One thing I just wanted to ask you, Camilla, was that this idea that it seems that people got very angry with them once they stepped back from the royal family to go and have essentially what they were saying, they stepped back from public life to have a private life. And for us, a private life means behind closed doors, never speaking to the press, like just going about your business. But what I got from the documentary was that public life, this royal life, a private life, was stepping away from sort of royal duties, but not private in the way that we see it. And maybe that's where the confusion comes, because now it's the first time I understood, oh, that's what you mean by a private life. It's the opposite of public royal duties. Am I right or am I wrong?
Well, yeah, and I suppose he's also talking about consent as to what he wants to have coverage of and what he doesn't. But then, again, it works both ways. You know, you're talking about what happened in the 1990s, which is completely different to now. And secondly, I suppose from a royal press pack perspective, the media gave them both hugely positive publicity, particularly Harry, if you look at initiatives like the Invictus Games and everything that he did in that charitable capacity is what we officially cover. What changed after Leveson is that we didn't go on their private holidays and we didn't go and pat them through the restaurants that they were eating at, quite rightly, because any journalist of my generation thinks that's completely inappropriate journalistic behaviour. So, yes, they're seeking a private life in America, but what's interesting about it is quite a lot of the footage of intrusion is by the US paps now, because there isn't that market in the UK. So I guess from a UK media standpoint, I'm looking at it going, well, hang on a minute. Your private lives were treated with great respect in a paparazzi and photography sense. What they're objecting to are they objecting to kind of intrusion, or is it an objection that they didn't like it when the headlines became more negative? It's like they're happy with the positive publicity, but not with the negative, even though some of the negative is justified. And there we therefore ask a question, well, you can't have it both ways.
Just finally, Camilla, that's the first 3 episodes have dropped this morning. We've got 3 more to come. We've no idea what's going to be in them. It's a well-made documentary. It's compelling. It's gripping in a lovely way. There were no bombshells. There is nothing I would have thought that is going to rock the palace. How will the teams, not necessarily the people involved, but the king or his brother, how will his dad and his brother be reacting to this, or the teams around them?
Well, I don't think they're going to be providing a kind of running commentary of response. I think they're just going to, probably they'll have aides watching. I don't know if the royals themselves will, and then they'll just see how the chips fall. I mean, there are some thinly veiled digs, but there's nothing like the Oprah kind of racism bomb in it. But let's wait and see. 3 more episodes to go, as you say, Phil, which are going to be released at the same time next Thursday.
All right. Same time next week then, guys, yeah?
Yes, yeah.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.